What's up, SE Nation? Welcome back to another video. So over the last couple of days, I've done a couple of webinars with Chris White about the three must-have skills of great sales engineers. And I wanted to take a little snippet of it and share it with you guys today on YouTube. We did launch a course, Chris and I, called Technical Sales Mastery. It's based on the 6 Habits of Highly Effective Sales Engineers, which is Chris's book. The webinar was to launch that, but also we wanted to provide a lot of value for that. So if you want to see the webinar, go to the webinar page, wetheSalesEngineers.com/webinar, register for it, and I will send you a link to view the replay. We're closing the cart in 5 days, so even if you're watching it after those 5 days, I can still share the webinar with you. So enjoy. See you guys in a bit.
Let's start with mastering a partnership with our sales counterparts. One of the things that I ask people is, why is this so difficult? And by the way, everywhere I go, everybody I talk to, they all talk about how challenging this is. And one of the things that I've discovered, and frankly, I've spent a lot of time thinking about, is just how differently we're wired. And we are just wired differently. It's like we're from different planets, you know? And I actually created this little matrix, Ramsey, that I wanted to share with everybody because I think it's an interesting insight into just how different we are. And there's also a touch of humor, I think, built in a little bit. First of all, you consider our backgrounds. Account executives, they tend to be business, have a background in business, typically non-technical, not always. Of course, our background tends to be technical engineering. Maybe we were a power user of the product that we support. How do we think, and how do they think? And this is a term that I learned about 15 years ago, actually. Account executives tend to think like the tribe. They tend to be what's referred to as tribal. What this means is they just tend to think like others. And by the way this is tested is people will actually be given a list of 20 words or phrases one at a time, and they have to respond with the first thing that comes to mind. About 75% of the population scores as a tribal, meaning they provide the same 4 or 5 answers as 75% of the other people. Sales engineers, on the other hand, they tend to think differently. We tend to think very unique, right? We value unique thoughts, right? In this particular kind of test that I'm referring to, they were called maestros, right? About 25% of the population, when tested, in fact, the last I heard, it might even be more like 20% or less. They come up with answers that are completely unlike anything anybody else tests. So we're just very different. Now let's take it a step further. Introverted versus extroverted. Now these are not hard and fast rules. There are some exceptions, but account executives tend to be extroverted. A moment ago, Ramsey, you were just talking about how you're an introvert, which surprises me because you're very outgoing with me. But the reality is a lot of sales engineers, many are extroverted like me. I'm very extroverted. I get charged being around people, but a lot of us are introverted. Now you take those two together. You've got typically your AEs are extroverted tribals, and match them with an introverted maestro. It's just mixing oil and water right there. But it gets more interesting. What do account executives tend to be motivated to be? What are they motivated by, right? Sort of in the context of a group, right? They're motivated to be the life of the party, right? They like to be the center of attention. By the way, we want them to be. That's a good thing, right? They make good salespeople, right? These are the folks that say the most important thing I learned in college was the stuff that happened outside of the classroom, right? Whereas sales engineers, what do we tend to be motivated to be? Recognized for our expertise. That's what motivates us, right? We like to be sort of put on the pedestal and recognized as the subject matter expert, right? It goes further. When asked the question, AEs, right, our sales counterparts, they tend to round up. They tend to err on the side of favorable. By the way, there's nothing wrong with that, right? I was doing a workshop once and I asked one of the sales engineers how long it was one of the managers, how long he'd be a sales engineer. And he literally did math in his head, like adding up the different jobs, and said about 17 and a half years after, what seemed like a minute and a half. And I said, that's so funny, because if I asked a salesperson that, they'd probably be like, 20 or 25 years, right? It was kind of round up, right?
I have a sales guy who's been a sales guy for 20 years for the last 5 years.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. Now, how do we respond when asked a question? What do we value? Precision. We like to answer with precision, right? There's just a fundamental like conflict there, right? Again, it gets better. What is their initial perception of things and others? Tends to be accepting, trusting, right? They want to extend the benefit of the doubt. How about us? Again, this is not a blanket rule. This doesn't apply to everybody, but as a general rule of thumb, we tend to be a little bit skeptical at first, right? This is the way we initially sort of approach things with, a little bit of a, skeptic eye, right? What do they fear most in the context of a sale in particular? Losing the deal. What do we fear most? Losing credibility. That's what we fear the most. And again, these things are very much in conflict, right? What do they hate hearing come out of our mouths the most? Anything in their perception, I'm going to emphasize the word perception, anything in their perception that they believe is going to kill or slow a deal, right? What about for us? Anything that we perceive, and again, I'm going to use that word perception again, that we perceive to be untrue or an exaggeration. Now, I'm going to go back to when we were talking about the fact that they round up. I'm going to tell everyone on this call that I bet you've probably accused one of the sales persons that you've worked with over the years of lying or not telling the truth. I'm going to submit to you that in most cases, I don't think they're lying. I think in most cases, they're just rounding up. In most cases, they're just answering with a certain vagueness that allows room for interpretation, right? And it's our job to provide that level of precision and that interpretation, right? All right, what do they tend to think? They tend to think they have no idea how hard my job is. What do we tend to think? They have no idea how hard my job is.
At least
right?
they agree.
At least we agree on something.